Hello.
And welcome to the draft recap video. Thankfully, NFL action is only a few days away. Can't wait. But yeah, hopefully this video helps tide you over till then. So we are officially in year 6 of our fantasy football league. And I have to say, I think we are all pretty good at this now. Because in the draft, there were very few reaches, very few terrible picks. Nobody drafted Sam Bradford or Ray Rice. Nobody drafted a kicker in the 9th round. And after looking at all the teams, I think this year is just totally wide open. I love it. All right, so just how a lot of times in pre-draft rankings, players are split into tiers. I'm going to do the same thing with the teams in our league. So we got 4 tiers that teams are split into for our post-draft, pre-regular season rankings. So here we go. So in tier number 4, our bottom tier, we got Drew Melson and Carry On My Wayward Son, and Ben Weeks and the unfortunately named Good Juju. And it's fitting that this tier has the 2 teams who missed draft day, because it's tough to remote auto draft and build a team just from a list. And it looks like these teams might have a couple holes. All right, so first let's look at Drew's team. And he should have been strong at quarterback, as one of his keepers was a strong quarterback. But now, sadly, that is a weak spot on his team.
It certainly isn't how I envisioned this or planned this.
So the other reason Drew is in this tier is sadly because of karma. Drew is a self-proclaimed diehard Eagles fan, yet his first pick was a New York Giant.
That is blasphemous!
I get it, though. Saquon was head and shoulders above everybody else. So we'll give him a pass on that. I get it. But then his second pick was a bit of a reach, and a reach for a cowboy in Amari Cooper.
Have you?
No. You're just going to yell for the rest of the segment?
So even though he's got solid talent at running back with Kerryon Johnson, Saquon Barkley, at wide receiver he's got Thielen and Cooper, I'm thinking Drew's karma is going to be pretty rough this season because he's conflicted between reality football and fantasy football, and that never ends well. Next up, let's look at Ben Weeks' team, which, as we said before, is still somehow named Good Juju, even though Juju Smith-Schuster was traded from this team like 10 months ago, and Fitz tagged him as a keeper like a month ago. And this is after Ben said, "Oh, I'm ready to rejoin the league this year. I'm going to be a full participant this year, I promise. I'm going to bring my A game this year."
One lie after another, and getting worse with each passing day.
So we'll see how Ben does, but it has been a rough start. After the draft, his team looks okay. It's pretty solid all around. Except Ben had one of the only huge reaches of the night, and it was to start off the night. Essentially, with that first pick in the draft, which, let's be real, everyone preps super hard for that first pick, knows who you want, is totally ready for that first pick. Ben texted me and asked me where the freaking league spreadsheet is and how he can find that. The same spreadsheet I plug every damn email, every message board post, every text message, every league homepage post. It's everywhere. And somehow Ben still couldn't find it.
Believe it or not, it's not even a difficult thing to do.
So that was a pretty big red flag for this team going into the draft. I kind of figured it'd be a rough night from there on out. So Ben hadn't done any research going into the draft. He didn't know who the keepers were, and the clock's on him for the 3rd overall pick. And he tries to draft sadly, both Le'Veon Bell and Alvin Kamara. He somehow thinks he has a steal, and then finds out that, oh no, they both are kept. Darn. And so the clock's winding down. Ben doesn't even really know who he can draft. He panics, and he just blurts out his pick. So with the reachiest of reaches Ben takes Leonard Fournette over Julio Jones, Michael Thomas, Tyreek Hill, Todd Gurley, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, Travis Kelce, you name it. Ben says, you know what? Fournette's my boy. I'm riding with Leonard Fournette. So he's got a lot of eggs in that basket. A basket that for me was the old Scroogey last year. I will forever be anti-Leonard Fournette. But yeah, we'll see, because Fournette's really his only good running back until, or if, Melvin Gordon comes back to the Chargers. Because, yeah, this team has both Melvin Gordon and A.J. Green, two massive wild cards and two players that won't be helping him early on. So Ben's team, if he survives the beginning of the season and those dudes come back for him and are crushing it like they usually do, this team could be a championship contender. But it could also work out that this team's headed to the toilet bowl. So it'll be fascinating to watch this team all year long. All right, we're moving on to tier number 3. And in this tier, we got Stephen Griffith and Team Holdout. We got Mike Melson and Russian Collusion, my team, and When's Keeping It Real Goes Wrong, and John Forneca and DJ's Puppy Show. So Griff's team is like a lot of other teams in the league, I think, in that it hinges on a couple really big question marks. So Griff could be headed back to the championship again this year, or watch out, he could be headed down towards the bottom and the toilet. So we'll see. One of those big question marks is, of course, his first-round Cowboy keeper, Zeke.
Zeke who?
And after Jerry said that, Zeke, I think you should hold out the entire season. Go get your money, Zeke. I'm all for it. Don't you play another snap. So that was definitely a risky keeper choice with a first-round price tag for Griff. So he did make up for it, though, with some late steals in the draft. I think he had a great draft. I love the Jared Cook pick. That was a steal late. Jared Cook's been my sleeper tight end for like the past 7 years, I think. So Griff got him late. And, of course, the Duke Johnson pick at running back, which at the time we didn't know it would be a huge steal. It looked like, oh, just your standard 8th round mediocre running back pick. But then we find out an hour after the draft, Lamar Miller blows out his knee, and Griff gets a starting running back steal. So that was a great pick, and yeah, this team, when you look top to bottom, pretty solid. Next up, let's look at Mike Melson's squad, which top to bottom I think looks good, but not great. His running backs might have been slight reaches in the draft. You got Derrick Henry in the 2nd round, which was a bit of a surprise, and Tariq Cohen in the 4th round. So Henry is on that weak Titans offense. They've been struggling to score. And Cohen has David Montgomery, potential rookie running back stud, to fend off for playing time. So the running backs, we'll see. Interesting draft picks there. But this team does make up for it, I think, at quarterback with Matty Ice and Trusty Rusty. And at wide receiver with Michael Thomas and Stephon Diggs. That's the foursome right there that can put up big points every week. So this is one of those like middling teams that I think could potentially make a run if things fall his way. All right, so now let's look at my team. And I'm the one who drafted it, and I still can't figure out if I like my team or not.
I don't know if I'm the best.
You're very good.
Let's say good.
I got a stable of running backs between Gurley, Cook, Josh Jacobs, and Marlon Mack. So I feel like I'm just set at running back all year. I got Kelce at tight end. I got 2 young stud keeper QBs in Wentz and Baker, who thankfully, as you might have seen on ESPN, have been training really hard all off season to get better. So that part of the team is fantastic. But I didn't have a wide receiver on my roster until round 10 of the draft, which is somewhat insane. So I have a bunch of high upside sleeper guys at wide receiver, late round flyers, but I'm just hoping 2 of them turn out to be somewhat okay at football. We'll see. If that works out, then I love this team. Finally, in this tier, we got the defending champ, John Forneca. And all offseason, the champ has had a pretty big head not being shy about throwing around his bragging rights and referring to himself as the champ. And I think now John thinks he doesn't even really need high draft picks because he's just the greatest fantasy football player to ever live.
One-on-one, I'm undefeated, never lost.
So we'll see if this year takes him down a peg. Because going into the draft, he had kept Christian McCaffrey in the first round and then traded away picks in rounds 2, 5, 7, and 10. So needless to say, John was just chilling for most of the draft and had a bunch of time to just hang out.
You want to get high?
But when he did make picks late in the draft, it did not turn out well. So, for example, he has McCaffrey and DJ at running back, and then he drafted 4 other running backs in the draft, and he's already dropped 3 of them, and the season hasn't even started yet. So, perhaps as the draft went on, John's decision-making perhaps was more and more compromised. But we'll see if the self-proclaimed trade and waiver wire king is at it again this year and can defend his title. All right, let's go on to tier number 2. And in this tier, we got John Fitzsimmons and Evan, and Allen, which will be super annoying to say all year, and Andrew Negri and Daddy Longlegs. So Johnny Fitz's team was one of the many teams affected immediately after the draft by the big NFL news Saturday night. Pretty crazy that somehow right after the draft, a stud quarterback retires and a starting running back blows out his knee. But yeah, Fitz drafted T.Y. Hilton in the 3rd round, which looked like a fine pick, but now Hilton has Jacoby Brissett thrown to him instead of Andrew Luck, a pretty massive downgrade there. But he's still got Keenan Allen at wide receiver, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon. This team's good at running back and wide receiver. The question mark for this team, we were talking about those big question marks for the teams in the league this year. Fitz is definitely quarterback because this team is clearly relying on those young, upside, mobile quarterbacks. The 3 quarterbacks on this team are Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Mitch Trubisky. So Fitz is clearly drinking the Kool-Aid on these young, mobile quarterbacks who sadly aren't that great at throwing, which is important for a quarterback, but they're super mobile, can pick up big points that way. So these picks could work out. They could be keepers for the future, or Fitz might be making desperation trades midseason. We'll see. But again, this team looks pretty great top to bottom. So next team started off with 2 of the best keepers in the league with Patty Mahomes and Davante Adams. But the trade-off was that he did not have a first-round pick going into this draft after getting Mahomes in the trade last year. But still, this team, solid draft, added some high-end talent. Mike Evans, a wide receiver, should be great. The make-or-break part of this roster, the big question mark here, I think, is running back, which is a little hard to figure out because you got, at starting running back, Devonta Freeman and Mark Ingram, which would be fantastic if it was 2015. But they have had some up and down years the past few years, so we'll see what they do. And then he's also got Phillip Lindsay, his waiver wire hero from last year, his boy, who is great with PPR, but again, he's contending with Royce Freeman in the backfield in Denver. So this running back crew, it's a threesome that could be top-notch, or it could really struggle. But either way, he's got Patty Mahomes. Boy can put up 50 points a night and carry any team to the promised land. So Negs has a good shot to go back to the playoffs this year. All right, finally we have made it to tier number 1, the top tier, which consists of Stephen Cole and Rusty Barnacle, and Pat Jordan and Brown to the crown. So Stephen Cole and Rusty Barnacle will say a below average Cole pun. Should be in tier number 1 after he straight stockpiled picks making trades last year. So somehow Cole has perfected his keeper league year-to-year strategy, I guess. He tanks 1 year, but makes sure to avoid the toilet bowl. stockpiles picks, and then wins the championship next year. Pretty clear from his first, then 7th, then 1st, then 8th place finishes in our league.
Just a process.
So this team is super, super dangerous, mostly because of its wide receivers in our, of course, PPR league. He's got Odell Beckham, Julio Jones, and Tyreek Hill, which is just a three-headed PPR monster right there. But speaking of Cole's wide receivers, Cole might not have the best fantasy football karma this year. We'll see. Don't let the smiling, church-going Cole fool you. When he drafts a fantasy football team, he throws his morals totally out the window because he's got girlfriend/child beating Tyreek Hill, cocaine using Odell Beckham, and of course Cole's favorite player, I think, in all of football, all-around drug fanatic Josh Gordon.
Who was on crack?
Yes, Cole's team looks fantastic, but let's hope the fantasy football gods reward us team owners who drafted good, upright, standing citizens to be on our team. So finally, in tier number 1, we have Pat Jordan and Brown to the ground. Yes, that Pat Jordan, who I think had his best draft yet, and whose team looks very strong. Just like Cole, he stockpiled some extra picks during last season on his way down to the bottom. And this year, though, Pat is now solid at every position, and this team has tons of depth. So, yes, he does have an unhinged, crazy person as his keeper and team namesake.
Like, it's an unknown when it comes to me.
Who has zero self-awareness whatsoever.
It's like one of those things where it's the ego. I don't have an ego.
But let's say, hypothetically, Antonio Brown hops into that cryo machine without his socks on again and almost freezes his own feet off again. I still think Pat's team would be just fine because he's got tons of talent with at wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, Cooper Kupp, and Tyler Lockett, in addition to Antonio Brown. At running back, he's got Nick Chubb, Damian Williams, and James White. Throw in George Kittle at tight end, Aaron Rodgers and the Rook, Kyler Murray at quarterback, and you got a championship contender right here, no doubt. So I'm looking for Pat to have one hell of a season. We'll see. The track record's not great, but this roster looks awesome, top to bottom. All right, so there you have it. Those are my 4 tiers for our league. So now I'm going to add, though, one final component to the draft recap video, something we have not done before, and that's a little simulation of the season. We're about to get real fancy on the draft recap because, yeah, what good is all this analysis without a final prediction for what's going to happen for everybody? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and simulate the regular season and the playoffs using probability weighting depending on those tier ranking numbers. So I'm only going to run the simulation one time, no cheating. And for all you math fans out there, like I know we all are, here's what I'm doing. If a team in tier X is playing a team in tier Y, the tier X team has a Y plus 1 over X plus Y plus 2 probability of winning, and the tier Y team has an X plus 1 over X plus Y plus 2 probability of winning. Trust me, these numbers are perfect. It's the best. So, as we all know, there's quite a bit of luck and chance in fantasy football, so that's what we're doing here. We'll just do a little random number generator and see which team comes out on top for all the matchups. So, without further ado, here are the final simulation results. So the AFC went according to plan in the simulation. Pat's Tier 1 squad dominated, going 11-3, getting that best record in the league, and getting the number 1 seed in the playoffs. Fitz's Tier 2 squad got the wild card with 8 wins. That was enough to get it done. And Griffin Ben, sadly, barely headed to the Toilet Bowl playoffs as the difference between actually finishing 3rd in the regular season and finishing 7th in the regular season was just 2 games in the simulation. But we've seen that year after year where the middle of the standings are so bunched like that. In the NFC, though, that was quite a surprise. Drew's Tier 4 team came out of nowhere, outperformed his super low draft ranking, and he hit the 10-win mark and won the division and got the number 2 seed in the playoffs. But Cole, who's a Tier 1 squad, he still eked his way into the playoffs. And hey, once you're in the playoffs, it's anyone's game. And meanwhile, Fornecka and I were both trash, losing 10 games, and we're headed to the Toilet Bowl playoffs. All right, so here's the simulation for the Toilet Bowl. And although Fornecka and I had the 2 worst records in the league, we avoided the Toilet Bowl, thank God, getting those Week 15 wins. And in Week 16, Griff edges out Ben in the Toilet Bowl, and Greg's relic of a team name, Good Juju, there is your Toilet Bowl loser. And in the real playoffs, the good playoffs, we see Cole pulls a semi-upset in the first round to knock out number 1 seed Pat. And number 2 seed and Tier 4 team Drew just continues to win, and he beats Fitz to make it to the title game. And in the championship, somehow Drew continues to outperform expectations, and even though the odds were against him all season long, wins the championship. And I swear, I thought I made a mistake when I coded in this simulation or something. I figured it had to be wrong, but I double-checked it, and it was right. Tier 4 auto-drafting, carry on my wayward son. That is your champion for this year. All right, so now let's find out what happens when we actually go live this weekend and the action gets real. Can't wait to watch it go down. Hope you enjoyed the video, and good luck to start the season.